Hello, everyone from across the globe. You are with Madhuri Govindu in Soulful Conversations. And we all are in dire need of some love and positivity in this world right now to stay calm, centered, and brave. And I have with me today the very popular and loved Gail Brenner. Hi, Gail. Welcome to Soulful Conversations.
Thank you. Hi, Madhuri and everyone. And I'm thrilled that you invited me to join you today.
Thank you so much, Gail. So let me introduce Gail to you. Gail is a licensed PhD psychologist with over 20 years of experience offering psychotherapy. Now, her work invites people to return to their essential wholeness, to shed false identities, and realize the truth of who they truly are. She received her BA from Carnegie Mellon University and her PhD from Temple University. She also completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Florida, and she has authored numerous published articles on coping with stress and chronic medical illness. And as a blogger, she has been featured on CNN, Huffington Post, Zen Habits, Mind Body Green, Tiny Buddha, Inspire Me Today, and The Undivided Journal. You can visit her website for more videos and blogs. But I'm extremely thrilled and excited to have Gail here with me in Soulful Conversations. So, Gail, in one of your blogs, right, you said expanding our attention beyond the mind and emotions to the whole of reality, we discover that there's an aware, peaceful, and loving presence right here at the heart of every experience we ever had. And when I think about what you have written here, Gail, when you say expand your attention beyond the mind and emotions to the whole of reality, the reality to the mind right now looks very grim.
Mhm.
We hear about so many deaths, the pandemic is on, we are buying oxygen to survive. So the reality right now, even if we are in the present moment, thoughtless and conscious and aware, the mind is so powerful that the news and the death of relatives, family members and friends being affected by COVID, so many things happening around you, the chaos happening around you creeps in. And it gets a little tough for us to live constantly in the present moment. And Gail, we need your help because fear is creeping in and it's eating us from within like a parasite. So tell us more, Gail, how do we constantly stay aware? And it's becoming a task right now to be in the present moment, thought free and embracing awareness. So Gail, tell us more.
So, the goal is not to put pressure on ourselves to be constantly aware. Awareness is already constantly aware, and it's effortlessly that. And I
Right.
can talk about that more as we go on. But when we feel fear in the moment, that needs to be welcomed. When our hearts break, when we see the news and we really take in what's happening to people all around the world, that is part of our present moment experience. So it's relaxing in a way to welcome all of it, even if it's hard in the moment or sad or makes us have certain feelings that feel difficult. That's okay. And what we do when we meet those feelings, those reactions, whatever we experience when we take in the news, what meets that is our loving presence. So to recognize, oh, I feel fear in the moment, or I'm grieving because of what's happening around the world. Just the moment of that and bringing our attention to that in a loving way and not resisting it is essentially a moment of peace. It might not be a moment of like joyful feeling, and that's okay, but it's not resisting our experience, and it really makes us more human and more alive to our experience when we can be with what is without pushing it away. So it's not like we push away the feeling so that we can be present. No, it's like we open up to everything to welcome it. And then in doing that, there's a certain kind of resting in our moments, in our nature that can happen.
Right, Gail, and that's a very beautiful way to put it, Gail. It really helps us understand that it's not about resisting, but accepting the moment as it is, with all that it brings, with everything that arises. Right, Gail, give us some practical tips now that you have spoken to so many souls across the world, and you've dealt with a lot of clients with trauma and the dis-ease that is on right now. You have some practical tips for us on what can we do in our daily lives to embark on this journey of awareness and consciousness? Where should somebody begin?
Okay, I want to mention two things.
Sure.
One is to have practices to be as conscious as we can in our lives. So that might be 5 minutes of a breathing practice where we slow things down and we feel the breath. We put our attention on the breath. It could be meditation if that's what is someone is drawn to. It's really important to um, put ourselves in the position where we can slow down and be present, and doing that consciously. And as we do that over and over, it just makes it more possible for us to be present in more of the moments of our lives. So that's the one thing that I want to mention. And the second one is self compassion, just softening with ourselves, loving our experience that comes up, like even shame, which is a hard one for a lot of people, to bring this attunement, this loving, this like deep acceptance, unconditional acceptance to some of these harder feelings, so that we end up feeling better and more peaceful within.
And Gail, at times like these, when you start thinking about shame or guilt, or when in a family, a partner, one of them is conscious, but the other is unconscious, and you're every day, every moment dealing with unconsciousness, right? And you understand, and sometimes you try to create healthy boundaries, but sometimes you fail. And as you rightly said, guilt and shame and anger, a lot of these qualities do arise in you, right? um, what do we do then? What do we do when we are constantly in touch with an unconscious person, but we realize nothing is working?
And sometimes, for many of us, when we encounter someone who's not quite as conscious as we might be in our own lives, we get triggered by that. And it's really useful to shift the perspective, not to blaming the other person or wanting them to change. It's so easy to get into that, like, I just want this other person to change, and then
Yes.
I'll feel better. And it's not up to us whether or not the other person changes. So it's an invitation for us to bring our attention back into our own experience so we can explore what's triggered in us. So if someone is unconscious, so in my life, and I feel angry about it, that's an invitation not to change the other person, but for me to explore the anger that's arising in me. Like, what is it that's gotten triggered? Why is what has come up for me, maybe from my early experience when I wasn't seen or met or loved, that being with that other person is bringing up. So it's a deep opportunity to explore our own conditioning when we're triggered by other people.
Right, right, Gail. And we do know that pain does come to us, but suffering is optional. We don't have to literally suffer, which is so true, Gail. And at times you try and create a lot of healthy boundaries, but someone crosses it. So you're doing everything right on your part, but the reason you're angry is because somebody crossed that healthy boundary, right, Gail? Do you have an advice for that?
Well, it's appropriate to set boundaries if that's what feels right. And again, to take a look at what's been triggered in us, but behaviorally, to set the boundary again, to engage less in the relationship. I like to say you can love someone from afar. You don't have to be in close relationship to feel loving toward that person. And it might be very appropriate to get some distance and not be so connected with them. So it's perfectly appropriate to protect ourselves, along
Right.
with that invitation again to explore within what that brings up for us. And
Right,
another
Gail.
level of it is, why are we connected with that person? You know, we often recreate these patterns in our lives that we learned when we were young. So that might be something to take a look at in that situation.
Correct, right, Gail? Gail, tell us a bit about your journey with Advaita Vedanta non-duality. How did it begin, and where are you with non-duality right now? Would love to know more because you're so balanced. You know you're in the moment, and we all would love to do that. So tell us more.
That question, even hearing that question brings tears into my eyes,
Right.
because it's this surrender of what I love, what I'm devoted to. And when I say surrender, it's the surrender of everything, everything personal, my preferences, my needs, my desires. You know, I listen to what life offers me, and over the years, I've just given up my personal preferences. They come up, but I find that when I listen and surrender, it's life is just amazing and blissful, actually. And my journey, it started with Buddhism, actually. That's where my spiritual journey started. And you know, even being a psychologist, I did a lot of psychotherapy to try to deal with my own personal suffering. Yeah, to be honest, it wasn't that effective for
Mhm.
me. And then I discovered Buddhism and meditation, and that was a big opening for me, that you can actually observe your experience rather than being caught in it. And that spaciousness that comes when I can just see that I have a sensation or a strong feeling running through me, and to not have to act on that and identify with it. That was a huge turning point for me. Eventually I found that Buddhism, it just wasn't the right path for me. And I
Mhm.
started exploring other teachers and discovered Advaita Vedanta and non-duality, which non-dual means not two. So it's about the truth of reality. And when I discovered that teaching, I just knew that I was home. It was a home for me. And then I just kept exploring and getting, you know, guidance from teachers, and realizing in the end that uh, to discover that place, that
Mhm.
spaciousness of not two, means giving up our own personal identities and our attachment to that. And that's been a beautiful journey for me, and continues to be. You know, it's a never ending journey to discover where we're attached, and to, you know, the letting go is just so beautiful and heartwarming and heart opening.
Right, right, Gail. And it's so beautiful to hear these words from you because it's been a lifelong experience for you, and that matters for so many of us because you have healed yourself. And it said if you heal yourself, you heal your entire world. There are no others. So you've healed everything around you. So, Gail, here is my next question, right? When you talk about giving up the personal self, and we are not two anymore. We all are one consciousness. Does it affect someone's self-esteem or self-respect to an extent? Did you have those feelings initially, Gail? And if yes, could you overcome them? Because all of a sudden you become one, and you remember the truth and you live by it, that there are no others, as Ramana Maharishi said. So, Gail, how do we deal with those thoughts that come initially, right? Please tell us.
Sure. So if let's take low self-esteem as an
Right.
example, because that's a really good example, and it's a very common way of thinking about ourselves. And if we untangle that, like look at what the thoughts are, I can't do this, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough. These are the thoughts that run through the mind of someone who feels low self-esteem or personal inadequacy. And it's important to notice those are thoughts running through our mind, and they have a certain kind of content which says I'm not good enough. And then the exploration or the inquiry invites us to ask, like, is that actually true? And what is it that's defined when we say I'm not adequate? What is inadequate? What is that? Like, where can you find that inadequacy? And when you go in, there's nothing there. There's just a thought that's running through the mind. And it might be a highly conditioned thought, because that's a kind of thought that we learned from our past. We've learned that it defines who we are. But then when we really question it, we discover that it's just a statement that keeps going in the mind, but it's not actually true, and it doesn't have to define who we are. So that exploration can bring us to a place of asking, well, who am I then? And that's a beautiful place of not knowing, of exploration, and ultimately of freedom, when we learn that who we are is not this limited self that's inadequate or not good enough or needs to get approval from other people in order to feel good about ourselves. That's a limited idea of who we are, and ultimately we find that it's not true. So it's a beautiful exploration when we feel low self-esteem to question that, to say, like, that's the first thing, like, is that true? And then another kind of direction is to always come back to the body. And I find that really, really useful. Like, what's happening in the body? And I automatically go one hand on heart, one hand on belly, come back to ourselves, take a breath. And when we do that, we're letting go of putting our attention into the mind, which is where those limiting thoughts are. And we come back into the present moment, and we're just here, we're breathing, and we can open to this kind of natural sense of well-being that's always here. We're not going to
Very
find
true.
that in the mind, so we can't keep going to the mind. But if we come back and come to the body and come to the breath, and then expand into this spaciousness that's here, just as best as we can, there's a peace that comes in the moment.
Absolutely, Gail, absolutely. And that's a very nice way of remembering your five senses, just coming back to your five senses immediately and getting out of your mind, because that is where the trouble is. That is where their chain of thoughts going on. So, very rightly said, Gail. You have written a lot of wonderful books, Gail. Is there one of these books that's your favorite that you would like to recommend for the viewers, Gail?
I like all of them. I mean, I put my heart and soul into them. Maybe the first one, which is called The End of Self-Help, because it was a big thing for me to write a book. It was even a big thing for me to start writing a blog. I always wanted to write, and I was limited, in my own thinking about it, like, oh, I can't do that. And, there were thoughts like that running through. And then I just started writing a blog many years ago and clicking publish, and it was just out there in the world. And it eventually came to me that it had been a lifelong wish actually to write a book. And then I just was open enough and free enough to start. And I just started writing, and then eventually it got published. So and that's, I say that as an inspiration to everyone. I'm not special. I've had my own limited thinking. It still comes up sometimes. And this deep exploration and this love of, like, wanting to know the truth of things and to not be limited in this life, it's totally transformative to embark on this journey to discover, like, what is this?
Totally, Gail. Gail, a quick key message from the end of self help that you have for us. A key message from that book.
Yeah. Well, the end of self-help really means there's no self to help. There's no limited self that needs to be improved or helped or made better or anything like that. That what the exploration is to discover the truth of ourselves right now in any moment. And when we do that, we find that it's possible to be free of our limiting thoughts about ourselves. And it's a beautiful, life-changing, transformative exploration.
Very well said, Gail, because right now we all have unique set of challenges. We all are so unique, and someone may have a financial pattern going on, losing jobs, getting into jobs, and some others have a relationship concern going on, not being able to stick to a relationship, etc. So we have unique set of challenges. But I love the way you said there is no self that needs self-help, because when you dig to the truth of it, there is no there's nothing that needs help, right? And that was so beautiful, Gail.
I want to add, though, there are things that need attention.
Correct.
So, for example, if someone has a pattern of getting into relationships that aren't working out, that it's not the fault of the relationship or the other people. It's an invitation to look at that pattern and where
Yes.
that pattern is coming from.
Mm.
So it's possible to explore that pattern and then little by little make changes and choose based on freedom rather than based on fear or need or longing or inadequacy.
Correct. Right. Very well said. I'm glad you pointed that out for us. Maybe we will have another conversation some other day about how to explore these patterns and how to untangle ourselves from these patterns. We certainly will have that someday. Gail, any parting message that you have for our viewers right now in these extremely challenging times that we are in?
And my parting message would be about kindness. And first of all, kindness toward ourselves. I think there's an epidemic of self-loathing, of self-separation. And the medicine for that is to welcome lovingly and unconditionally whatever arises in us, starting with us. So it's our relationship to our own experience. Like, how can we be loving and welcoming to whatever arises in us? And that could be fear or anger or sadness, grieving, shame, guilt, whatever it is. But there's this openness, this spaciousness that's always a part of our experience that can welcome what arises in us in a peaceful way. And this is what inner peace is. We stop fighting with ourselves and we can become peaceful inside. And when that peacefulness is here now and that unconditional acceptance, we naturally bring it out into every moment, every person, every situation that we're in the world. And that's what heals.
That's what heals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what heals. So, kindness, compassion, loving oneself as they are, accepting oneself unconditionally. This is so very important, especially in these times, right? Right, Gail. Gail, thank you so much. That was such a heartful, soulful conversation that we had, and they were such beautiful pointers that you gave us. We will more stay in meditation, in peace, in presence, in awareness, and continue to do that for a lifetime. Viewers, we will get back to you with another video exploring more topics. But thank you so much for being with us on Soulful Conversations with Madhuri Govindu and Gail. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Madhuri.
Thank you.